Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the AVO podcast, where we invite members and providers of the AVO community on to talk about their expertise in preventative care, as well as their experiences in the holistic health and wellness field. And today we have our good friend Jill from TrueRest. Jill, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. We're so excited to hear about you and kind of what you got going on with TrueRest and everything, and get into a little bit of like sensory deprivation and just basically the entire field of recovery and proper recovery.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk about it. I love sensory deprivation and just love what float therapy does for people, and I can't wait. So,
well, time to drill you then. Let's go, okay? So, Jill, tell us, I need to know a little bit just about you, right? Kind of tell us where you're from. What's your story?
Awesome. Yeah. So I am from North Carolina. I came out to Utah to pursue education, and I graduated from UVU, did public relations. And so now I'm living in Eagle Mountain. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and she's like the best thing that ever happened to me and my husband. So
Precious.
Thank you. Thank you. And I got into the float industry about 2.5 years ago. And a little bit about that, my dad was in the military, and he I feel like with most service members, PTSD is something that's huge in that community. And he was watching a show that talked about float therapy, and he looked into it, and him, my mom, and myself decided to buy into the TrueRest franchise. We, own 2 locations. We own in the Provo Riverwood Shopping Center. There's 1 location there, and then 1 in Draper. So we have those 2 locations. And going back a little bit with my dad, the benefits of float therapy range from better sleep, chronic pain relief, more mental benefits of anxiety, depression, PTSD, those types of things. And so really passionate about that, really passionate about people who are in pain or struggling with things and being able to benefit from float therapy. So
I love it. I love it. And a little bit going back to your father. So
Yes.
PTSD,
Yes.
serious business.
Definitely.
So saw this commercial ad on TV. And so he went to go try it. And can you kind of like dive a little bit more into like his experience, especially with something as serious as PTSD? Did he experience more symptoms after, or were they gone? Or
So that's one thing about float therapy. I feel like common misconception. I hear this all the time of like, oh, I didn't love my first float, or I didn't have 100% relief from whatever I'm struggling with after my first float. It's not one size fits all. It's not also like one pill fixes everything, It definitely takes time. So after his first he kind of like did more research into it, looked into what float therapy was, just the benefits that way. And then he was able to try it out. And after his first session, for him personally, and I can't 100% speak to his experience, but just through talking with him, he was able to see specific things with just anxiety decrease a little bit. With float therapy, 24 to 36 hours after your first float is where you're seeing that type of relief. So it's definitely something that you have to continuously do, maybe once a week starting out. I know a lot of the times, depending on timing of your float, a float is typically 60 minutes. So a 1-hour float, a lot of people don't have time within their everyday week to make that possible. So starting off with even 1 float a month was something that he tried, and just was able to really pay attention to his relief after his first float. And then after hearing about his experience with the float, I decided to try it for myself. So yes, but I want to make sure that I'm like answering your question as far as him did that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Big time, because that is just something that is so prevalent. It's so sad. And I feel like it's overlooked a lot, especially with our service members. Is that PTSD. And like, instead of shipping them off to the VA hospital and being like, hey, you need to take this.
Yes.
Allowing them to maybe be in a place or a state where things are quiet.
Yes.
And it's like they can bring it back.
Definitely. And through my research specifically with PTSD or just anxiety, different stress disorders, I've seen that those people might have harder times being in really crowded places, holidays, just big events are really hard for them, lots of noise. And being in a pod, which we can get into, obviously, like what float therapy is, like what the actual float is like.
Yes.
You're in a state where there's no outside stimulus. So you're in a pod by yourself. There's no noise, no, aside from your thoughts, nothing going on. And you're really in that quiet place and able to be alone, and just be away from outside stimulus. So
wow.
yeah, it's really amazing. And like you said, with our service members, it's like from people in the military, from firefighters, paramedics, things like that, who are in constant situations where they're seeing things or hearing things, or just, the brain is very powerful and your mind is very powerful, and it holds on to things that you've dealt with. And so to be able to, create an environment where you're able to have quiet and be able to reduce the stimulus from our everyday lives, it's really amazing. And so I love hearing stories of people. Obviously, I'm really passionate with my father, but just even guests who we have come in, our clients who share their experiences, I love it, and love that we're able to be a part of their healing process. So
wow. That amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, then I guess that segues perfect into your experience.
Yes. Okay. So my first experience was prior to buying into the business. So prior to becoming an owner in the business, I tried it out. And I remember my first time was definitely a little bit different, because just to speak to the pod itself and just what the flow experience is like. So in our locations, we have 6 different pod room suites. And so in each suite, there is a bench for your clothes, different hooks that you can hang towels on. There's a towel, shampoo, conditioner, body wash. There's earplugs to help your ears not get salt water into them.
Yeah.
There's petroleum jelly that helps. It acts as like an underwater Band-Aid. So if you have any minor cuts or scrapes on your skin, floating in that salt water is not going to irritate you in the float session. So there's that. There's a shower. You shower off before you get into the pod, and then it's 10 inches of water with over 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. And so it's super saturated with salt water, or I guess salt itself. And because of that, you float effortlessly on a skin temperature water. So it's 94 degrees, and that creates the reduced environmental stimulus therapy. And so TrueRest, rest stands for that acronym, and you're able to have that restricted environment where we're just creating that environment where you're floating effortlessly on the water. There's no, pain on your spine, no pressure on your back. Just with everybody has that pressure of, even when you're laying down on your bed, there's pressure on your spine. And so creating that environment where you're just floating on the water. But going back to, I guess, the question of my first experience, I came in, I floated, and the first time it was pretty hard to like fully relax. Like I definitely, it's an hour-long session. I definitely did not feel like an hour. For me personally, it felt more like 20 minutes. So it went by really fast, which is the goal for people, to get in there and be so relaxed that you're not counting down the minutes and just counting down the time for when it's over. But I remember like thinking a lot and having the urge to check my phone or to check my watch, or just to try to I wasn't able to totally relax because I was thinking of everything outside. And I think that is like the biggest thing for me personally. I love being forced to relax and take time for me. For, all of us, we're in a world where we're constantly getting phone notifications or constantly just having something going on, social media, constantly refreshing your page. And we're always like used to the next thing happening. So taking a 60-minute session where you're able to relax and not focus on the stresses or just whatever's going on in your life, it's really, really helpful that way. So,
and I'm like, in exactly what you said, so overstimulated all the time.
Same.
Right.
Yes.
And it is, and also speaking to your point about consistency, about doing this once a week or a month or things like that, because I'm sure the first time, I know if I walked in there for my first time, if I was just sitting there like this and I had to sit there for an hour, I'd be like, I'm like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes,
and just like
absolutely.
fidgeting and things
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
But it is, you're right. It is so important, and it is so crazy to think about how much on the go we are, right?
Absolutely.
Even when you go to yoga classes or things like that, and they say like, savasana or whenever you're on your back, I think that's savasana.
I think it is. Yes.
Yes, and you're supposed to detach, right?
Right.
It's even when I try to do that, I'm still everywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so interesting about your business is that sensory deprivation where it is, right? I think you're in this water, it's very quiet, the lights are off, things like that. And it's almost like that in that moment when you don't have anything else, right? Like, can you really give yourself an hour to just shut off and relax? And I think that is just amazing that you guys are trying to get people to do that.
Yes. And kind of like you're saying, just with the taking that time for yourself, I always tell people when I'm talking with them, you deserve that time and you deserve to take 60 minutes for yourself. Because honestly, like even when we're asleep, are our minds truly off or not going? Like we're dreaming, we're subconsciously thinking about things. And I think that just the benefits of float therapy, it's like you can't afford not to take that time for yourself. It's so good for, joints, pain, whether it be chronic or just regular aches and pains of, working out, or even just like pushing your body harder than you typically would, like going on a long walk, something like that. Things that we aren't necessarily aware of that are going on inside of our body. It assists with deeper sleep at night, which who doesn't want to sleep better and have, not have sleep issues. And it's just, it's so important and so helpful. And I really feel like it could benefit anybody. And that's what I love with our clients, like coming in, talking with people, saying, what brings you in? We have people come in with fibromyalgia. We have people who come in after surgeries and kind of rehab that way. We have people with more stress disorders, anxiety, depression, just those types of things. And hearing their story of why they're coming in and then just being a part of that process. I was talking with a guest the other day about her experience with float therapy. She had some residual effects of COVID during the pandemic, and it was about a year after she had been trying a lot of things, gone to a lot of doctors, tried to figure out how to help. She was having chronic pain because of those residual effects.
Yep.
And she told me that after her first session, she got in her car and just broke down crying because it was the first time that she felt in over a year relief from her pain. And I just think that that's just so powerful to be a part of that process with people. And I just love to hear about how, whatever it is that you're coming in for, what you were able to get relief from. So
I love how it's float therapy.
yes.
I love that because that was going to be like one of my other questions, which you kind of just answered, was just like, how do you convince people that they deserve to have an hour where they can shut it off, right? Yeah. Like, how do you convince people? Because it's easy to tell somebody that. It's easy to be like, oh, just relax, just calm down. But how do you say, okay, you know what? You can. You can put this aside for an hour. Yeah. It's going to be there with you, but you can put it aside for an hour and just turn off. Yeah.
I think that's a great question. I think that learning why it is that they're coming in is obviously really important. I think it's really hard to, if you don't understand the why behind why somebody's trying to do something, it's almost impossible to talk with them and figure out, a treatment plan or just, give recommendations. Because if you don't know, people are aware of the fact that like you don't really know things about them, or you're kind of more giving a one size fits all answer. So I think obviously talking with people, building that rapport with them and just talking with them about why and truly listening, I am guilty of this a lot. Like I'll be, listening to someone talk and think of the next thing that I'm going to say. And it's like something I'm definitely working on. I feel, I feel like it's just hard because it's like we want to give an answer back, but getting kind of out of your head in the sense of just listening and just hearing, I love to hear people's story and then give a response, because I think it's really easy to see through when you didn't necessarily hear something that they're saying. But to answer your question of how you can convince somebody, or just like convince them that they are worthy of this, or just that they need this for themselves, I think that the biggest thing is telling them to be aware of their benefits over the next 24 to 48 hours. So sometimes people will come out of their session and they're like, yeah, just wasn't for me. My husband, actually, his first float session, he got salt in his eye, and it like completely ruined
Oh, I bet that would
his
stink.
experience. Yeah.
Oh.
You have to get out. We have little spray bottles that have fresh water in them that you put inside the pod, and we tell guests to do it, but sometimes they forget. There's lots of information, so sometimes they forget to grab it. So he personally forgot. He had to get out, rinse his eye out in a shower, and then get back in. And although that's okay, it gets you out of your resting state where you're, locked in, you're in the pod, the door is shut, you're floating, you've kind of zoned out, and then all of a sudden an eye sense have gotten salt in my eye, and it's like definitely game changing, because it's so salty. It's like
I
you
bet
can't
it
just
burns.
like wash it out and go on with your float. It totally gets you out of that state. And so because of that, there are guests who come out and their first session isn't ideal, or they weren't able to relax. They were like not possibly able to turn their brain off and not able to not check their phone, or whatever it is. And I always tell people, like, talk to me, tell me like what happened, tell me why it wasn't an amazing experience. And that way too, when we invite them to come back, tell them, hey, here's what I would recommend next time. Here is, I'm trying to think of like an example. We have guests who sometimes will come in and we have speaker systems wired into the pod where they're able to listen to meditative music, or able to have an aux cord and listen to whatever they want. We have guests who come in and will like listen to a podcast or something. And while that's totally fine, because you are floating in the Epsom salt, you are able to get the magnesium benefit soaking through your skin. Super great for like more physical reasons to float, but then the more mental reasons, you're not necessarily getting those, because your brain is occupied and you're not forcing your brain to totally relax and be able to get into that altered state. And so that is like, obviously, if that works for you, that's awesome. We want you to at least get those physical benefits. But if they were like, yeah, my brain was going 100 miles a minute, it's like, maybe try this next time. Maybe try one of our music tracks. We have music spa tracks that are 15, 30 to 40 minutes of music. And then the remaining 45, 30, or 20 minutes would be total silence. And that's a great way to get into, being able to get a sense of how the music tracks help you relax, and then have that time period of silence where you're not just diving straight in. That's really hard for first-time floaters who haven't had 60 minutes of silence aside from when you're sleeping, but you're not necessarily aware of. So it is a hard place to jump right into. But that would be a recommendation where I would say, okay, try this next time. Or, one thing that I've been thinking of recently, just when talking with guests, is try to be really aware of how you sleep the next 24 hours, like how you sleep tonight.
Awareness.
Be aware of that, because I think that if you write off float therapy, you get salt in your eye your first time. You're like, not for me, never want to try this again. But then if you have any positive effects from the float session, you're not going to attribute those to floating. You kind of already written those off. So I think awareness is a really helpful thing as well. So
big time. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Cause see, that's my thing about, not the strongest swimmer. So how do you deal with, because I mean, like, I understand the science behind the salt, helping you able to float effortlessly or everything like that. But in the back of my mind, it's like, you're going to sink to the bottom.
Yes.
And that's where you'll drown. And so how do you get help with people who have maybe,
Definitely. That also, claustrophobia is a huge thing. So in our Provost spa, it's actually like a clamshell pod where it actually closes down. They don't lock or anything. So that's like a big question that people have is like, is this some scary movie where I'm locked into this? And it's like, nope, I like to say it's like a yoga class or any type of fitness class where you can really make it your own and, modify as needed. So if you are really claustrophobic, you can, lock the pod room suite door. You're in there for your session. Nobody's going to be coming in or out. So you can actually have the door open, and that can really help,
Okay.
So Provo is our clamshell pods. Draper is our circle pods, and they actually slide shut. So whatever it is, whatever pod you're in, you're able to really make it your own. So you can leave the doors open. We have sensor lights that turn off to help with the restricted environment stimulation therapy. And so because of that, it's total darkness. But if people aren't comfortable with that, we can modify things to make it more conducive to your healing. And so because of that, we have the Epsom salt as well. Sorry, I'm trying to think of your question.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But people who have questions about that, so it's only 10 inches of water. And so that's great because, you're not in deep water. Yes.
Right there. Huh?
Yeah, less than a foot. So it's like, okay, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
But also totally a valid fear. Definitely something that we want to make sure that when you're getting into the pod, if you're scared of something or you're just worried about something, you're not going to be able, like you said, to totally relax and let go. And so that's one thing that I always try to tell people, trust the water as best you can. I think subconsciously, if you're not able to totally relax, you might even hold on to some tension within like your neck or your back. And that can kind of create some more pain versus the relief that you're floating for. And so because of that, I really emphasize trust the water. If you have questions, we have a little intercom box in each pod where you can talk with the front.
Nice.
You're in there. But if you have a question of, hey, how much longer is my flow? Or hey, like, how do I turn the pod light on? There's a pod light inside the pod that you can either turn on or off. Like I said, there's just ways to modify it, make it so that you're most comfortable and able to truly relax and get the benefits that you're there for. So
that is that is awesome. Yeah, this sounds like the dadgum Hilton of float spas. This is incredible. And I know, especially with something up and coming like float therapy, it's very pseudoscience. It's very like people are like, there's not too much research behind it. Oh, it could be this and, things like that. Of course, with, like you said, the introduction with Epsom salt, that is more of an ionization thing with osmosis in and out of the body. Right. That's going to pull and help with, rehydrating muscles and making sure that they're nice and healthy and things like that.
Right.
So there is obvious those physical benefits. But what I also love about it, and that's something that AVO was just so giant on, is that there is nothing that works independently of itself. The physical, the mental, and the spiritual realm all work in tandem, right? In symphony. And so with float therapy, right, there is the biggest aspect. I feel like, yes, I know there are those physical benefits, but the biggest aspect is that mental benefit to be able to surrender completely.
Yeah.
It's so easy to talk about, you just, you breathe and then you release it. But surrendering is different, right? And like you said, like if you don't surrender, the body has defenses that it will turn on to make sure that you are safe in this environment that you don't know about.
Totally.
And so like I love how you guys do have those things in place to make people feel safe enough to surrender, but also give them the courage to actually do that, because the mental benefits of letting the mind flush is incredible. So I mean, with that being said, I want to envision me walking into a TrueRest facility. What's the first thing I'm going to experience? Take me through an entire appointment.
Okay, awesome. So yes. So first thing that you'll probably experience is the smell. So we have little diffusers going on. We have different essential oils. So walking in and feeling that ultimate relaxation and just, you're at peace. It smells nice. It's a spa. We're a spa, so it's very much that spa vibe. Our front desk float consultant staff member would greet you. Hey, you must be Ricky. great to see you, or hey, have you ever been in before? Kind of just starting to build that rapport. So what brings you in? How did you hear about us? What are your intentions with the float today? You know, what are you looking to get out of your float session? From there, we make sure we have your waiver form filled out. We make sure that we have all of our appointment type, you know, with our point of sale all filled out. And then we have you watch an 8-minute introduction video put out by the TrueRest brand. It talks about the history, the science of floating, different types of, I guess, just the history of float therapy itself, different tips and tricks for your first time. So one big thing is the earplugs, remembering to put those in, the petroleum jelly, so that, you know, nothing's going to hinder your first experience. But then with that video, we have a little video room. We call it the theater room. And sometimes when you're coming in with a friend, or even if you're just by yourself, we're really aware that sometimes people aren't paying close attention to that video. They're on their phone. They kind of tune that out.
Yeah.
And so after that video, we like to start a tour, and we give all new clients a tour. If you haven't been in a while, but you have floated with us, we'll give you a little miniature version, a refresher course of that. And with that, we then just start going over the different amenities that we have. And then once inside the room, we will go over the components of the pod, making sure that you're, again, reminded, even though the video covers it, reminded in person of those things that you want to remember. So after the video, we'll walk you through our Oasis room. After your float, we have tea, water, coloring books, journals, things like that, you're just able to relax. We have a oxygen bar. There's 6 different scented aromas where you're getting concentrated oxygen and really able to practice breathing after your float. Just take time to relax, so that after this session where you're getting so much benefit from float therapy, you're not just like running out the door and having to just like quickly move on to the next thing, because it's such a special place that you're in during that float. You're able to come in and kind of gather your thoughts, write things down. Lots of people will journal on their phones, but just have that time where you're able to relax. So we just show you around the different rooms. We have a prep room. So after your float, you're able to come out, do your hair, get ready. You know, sometimes people will go out for the day afterwards or go to work.
Yeah.
And so there's that room where there's styling tools and lotion, deodorant, different products to get ready for whatever's next that day.
Okay.
Yes. But then going to the pod, so we're going to show you the pod itself. We'll show you the lights inside the pod, the intercom system, the shower, the conditioner, the shampoo, the body wash, all the different amenities that are there, reminding you to, you know, again, those tips and tricks. So like I mentioned, the earplugs, the petroleum jelly, major thing is going to be the spray bottle, and remembering to bring that there, easy access, so that if you do feel water get on your face, just wipe it off with a little hand towel. Nice. There's that. And then the final thing is going to be like, if all else fails, just hit that intercom and we can answer any questions that you have. So those types of things. All of our employees too, we always like to have them float as much as possible so that they're able to give firsthand experience. So I always really like to emphasize the things that help me best, which is obviously always bringing that water bottle into the pod.
That's good.
Yes.
Good to know. I'll remember that.
Yes. Just those things that, like, little anecdotes of like, hey, I've had this before. I'm trying to help you have the best experience possible. So that type of stuff. And then after your float, you would get ready, stop by the prep room, and then we meet you up in the Oasis room where we offer tea, water, and just that relaxing environment. And then after you're done there, typically people spend 10, 15 minutes too. We have people who spend, you know, hours in that room just relaxing, putting their feet up. There's really no pressure to get out, you know. We aren't gonna pressure someone of like, hey, we need to check you out and you need to, you know, go. We have other guests coming. It's really a relaxing environment, which is awesome when people want to spend time there. I love when people feel relaxed enough that they want to be there. And then after you're done there, we just meet you up front at time of checkout. So
very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So because that's what I was wondering the most, is just like when the time is up. You know, some people could be in that super deep meditative state. It can be kind of jarring to be like woken out of that. So you guys just come in with like a fire hose. You guys like, time's up.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. We do actually have people who will fall asleep, and if that's the case, we just buzz in on the intercom and say, hey, can we help you? But like you said, we don't want to jar people out of their relaxing state. But we do have those methods of ways just to say like, hey, do you need any assistance, without it being really jarring of like, hey, your float's done, like come out, like hurrying them along. So
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. And I know you mentioned the video beforehand that explains the history of float therapy and everything like that. I'm going to jump into that, but like, with this brand, TrueRest, what I know, True, TRU, right? And then Rest.
TRUE.
So it is. Okay, so it's TRUE. But they all stand for something, right?
Rest.
It's an Rest. Rest is the acronym.
So
Okay.
True, and then reduced environmental stimulus therapy. So that therapy is the goal of the session. So with the podcast that you might be listening to or your audiobook, like I said, like you do get those more physical benefits, but reducing the stimulus of your environment where you're floating effortlessly in skin temperature water, you don't feel the water. Like, so one thing I kind of glazed over is you are in your private suite and it's recommended to float in the nude. So because of that, you're not in a swimsuit, you have nothing like digging into your skin, no like waistband or anything like that. And because of that, it's completely reducing anything where any noise, any disruptors, I guess, in that sense, that would take you out of that state. So truly you're in there by yourself. We do have people who, like I said, modify it. They make it more comfortable for themselves. We do have people who float in swimsuits, but just for that true reduced environmental stimulus therapy, it's going to be, the most silent, quiet, there's no lights, just nothing where you're being taken out of that state. So that's what we're aiming to do. And people can, again, modify it for however they want. But yes.
Nice. Wonderful. Cool. Yeah. So, okay, then. Riddle me this. So a lot of the practitioners that we have in the AVO community, they are, of course, you told me your story about your father and in your experience and everything with it like that. But one thing that we really, really like to put forward is that AVO, all of our providers, everything like that, we are about the clients, the members, the community. Yes. We want them to experience holistic health and wellness like no other, right? We are pseudoscience backed by science, right? We try to connect, like I said, all of those different aspects. So can you tell me, and everyone has this, an experience with either a member, a client or something like that, where their life, like they've come to you and they're like, really, this has been incredible. This has like changed my life. Do you have any experiences like that with members, or even someone close to you or anything like that you can tell us about?
Yes. So my first thought always comes to that member of ours who broke down in her car crying after her first session, just that relief that she had. Personally, for me, just a little bit about my experience too. I liked to float during my pregnancy, where you're not supposed to lay on your back and have that pressure on your spine. Just, blood flow and things like that aren't necessarily the best. But my experience just with having no aches and pains, being able to lay on my back and being able to have that oneness with myself, with my baby, feeling her kick, things like that, to where I was able to really center my life and take time for me and being able to relax. That's been one thing that has been game changing and just something that I love. So talking with clients, I do have, pregnant moms who come in, or even just moms who come in for themselves, taking an hour of quiet, especially in that busy time where, they have little kids, always needing something. Yes. You're really, as like a mom, speaking for myself, really overstimulated sometimes, being touched and, hey, can I have this? Can I have that? Just all those things, able to really take that time to relax, and not only relax and have that peace and quiet, but being able to have the benefits of float therapy. But that, as well as people who come in we had this client who, one thing I guess is like, specifically, I have a couple clients in mind that this has happened with, but one thing that I feel like is amazing for me to witness and just our staff to witness, I feel like you'll have a client come in and you can physically tell that they're really upset or angry or in pain. And I think a lot of the times when they're in that state of frustration, they are having obviously something deeper happen, and you're not necessarily knowing that prior, but you can tell that something bigger is going on beneath that anger and that frustration. And then after their float session, having a 180 done of this really happy, lovely individual come out, and just you can tell that something is different about them. That, I would say, is, aside from those who have shared their experience of pain relief and just having things that have chronically bothered them for months, years, having their testimony of like, hey, this really helped me. Aside from those individuals, having just the personality shift of, I was really frustrated or stressed or really just dealing with something, obviously, and then coming out and being a kinder individual and just having a complete shift in personality, I think is really cool to just witness, whether they open up and share about that or not. Just being able to see the change in an individual is a really amazing thing that, again, I really like to be involved in the process of. I love that every person who's coming in, I know that there's something that they can benefit from, whether it's one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
And just being able to, if they open up to you, learn what that is, but then also see that within them. So,
yeah, I love it.
Yes.
You're bringing it back, right? Those mental changes, those mental ability to express those emotions,
right.
Like when they're in the float tank, right? They have the opportunity to finally be like, and let it out,
yes.
Right? Because
Totally.
and it can be all absorbed and everything by the water and all, energy wise and all of that good stuff, right? They have the rage rooms and people can break stuff and get things, and
Yes.
I see True Float being able to have that space,
Definitely.
right? Like you said,
Yep.
surrendering, being nude, right? And then allowing those emotions to process.
Definitely.
And now it's not just some Houdini, this.
Right.
Maybe they feel better, like you said, you can see the physical relief change that happens from that.
Definitely.
That is amazing.
That's what I love too, because there's so much energy wise that goes into things. But then I also love, I just recently got to go to a float convention where it's called FloatCon. It's just every float person in the industry. I think there were a couple hundred people. We were all in meetings all day, or just, presentations from doctors, just where it's backed by science. I think that the coolest thing is people struggling from eating disorders or even just body dysmorphia. It's, again, a spectrum of, there's so many benefits of that. And just a study that I was reading over showed that people who are struggling with anorexia, bulimia, things like that are so severe and could be such a major thing going on in someone's life, being able to have the float therapy benefits, it showed differences between an inpatient treatment center versus an hour float a day, and just having specific benefits of after floating, not to discredit obviously a treatment, I think that is so helpful, but having that treatment as well as having a different modality of float therapy and being able to see the benefits of after a float therapy session, that they had a specific correlation to how they viewed themselves and seeing and really identifying with their body, being closer to identify how they saw their body in a positive way versus a negative way, and just seeing that benefit for just individuals who were able to have that after, an hour float session, which when you look at it that way, it's such a major change within your life. And it's how could you afford not to have 1 hour where you give that to yourself a day? And it's not necessarily that you have to float every single day of the week, but one float a month, one float a week, trying to build up to a goal where it's obviously attainable for you. You don't want to look at float therapy as something that you're dreading having to go to. So
exactly,
you want to fit into your life in a way that makes sense. If a float a week isn't something that works for you, try a float every other week, just figuring out what works for you and really being able to, rather than dread it, look forward to it and, have those benefits. that way. So yeah,
And I love that language you use.
Yes.
Look forward to it.
totally.
How can you, and it's as weird of a sentence as it is to say, how can I look forward to taking care of myself?
Right.
I have so many things I need to do. I've got
Right.
so many people that I need to take care of and count on and things like that.
Yep.
But just like you said, you will be able to show up more in those categories
Absolutely.
if you gave yourself that hour.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think, yeah, it is so important. And also working in tandem with those healthcare professionals, right? Like
Totally.
that's why people don't understand that there is no such thing as a one-trick pony.
Totally.
No such thing,
Totally.
right?
As much as we would love it, how amazing. And that's the thing. If it was something that just one time fixed it, one pill would fix everything, everyone would be doing it. That's why it's a process. That's why it's more of a pattern of, okay, I'm floating 4 times a month. This is what's working for me, and I'm seeing these benefits of that. But it is something that the more you do it, the more you see. It's similar to eating healthy or working out. You're not able to go work out for 6 hours and have an amazing body, have your six pack,
Yep.
It definitely, there's things, and going back to, it's not just one thing's going to fix everything. There's handfuls of things. It's a network of, this is how I'm healing, or this is what is helping me. And it's not just necessarily one thing. It's going to be, with working out, eating healthy, working out, resting, giving yourself that time to recover from your workouts, just all of those things. There's so many things that go into it. So it's not necessarily that floating is going to, you do 1 hour session once a year, and you're cured.
Good to go. Yeah.
It's not like that. You
Yeah.
do need to work it into your life. And again, I think that's just saying, I deserve this and I look forward to this because I know how I feel, and just being aware of those things. It's, how could you afford not to, if that's the case, So
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Why not take that money that you might be spending going through, either like a McDonald's line a couple times a week or something like
Right,
that,
right.
and instead of putting that towards something that will be so beneficial to you. That's what I know I keep bringing back and trying to reiterating it, but it is so important to get people to surrender and actually allow themselves to
Totally.
relax.
Yes.
And to say, you know what? Yes, that is going to happen. It's going to come later. These problems are still there, but consciously choosing to be like, no, this is for me.
Yep.
If I can do this for me,
Yep.
oh, imagine what I can do for others.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why I at first, when I was researching TrueRest and flow therapy and things like that, I'm wondering, I'm like, okay, well, what's the science behind it? How does this work and things
Right.
like that?
Right.
But as I deep dived into it, and even with this podcast and this chat we're having, I'm like, yeah, it is so important. Sensory deprivation. That's kind of the little last bit I want to get in here is kind of tell me what as science wise, and also just with your expertise and things like that. Sensory deprivation. What does it mean?
Yep.
How do I achieve that with TrueRest, and then the benefits and beyond. So
Yes. Okay. So sensory deprivation, also known as float therapy, with TrueRest, REST being the acronym, reduced environmental stimulus therapy, we are aiming to help people come in and have that restricted environment where you're free of stimulus, able to fully relax. So with your question, I'm sorry, I'm blinking. So how are we able to provide that for people, or just how do you set that up for yourself? Is that the question?
yes, how does TrueRest? I know we talked about the pod and everything like
Yes.
that, and that I just kind of wanted to get more into the science behind sensory deprivation. What does that do
Yes.
in terms of our brains? Because a lot of people talk about dopamine resets and doing all these crazy things, and honestly, that's not really a thing, but it's just I understand that sensory deprivation can turn off overactive parts of the brain.
Yes.
That might be causing issues, right? That might be triggering anxiety, stress, depression, things like that, right?
Overthinking.
Overthinking and
Yes.
things like that. And so, with TrueRest, basically, I kind of want to deep dive a little bit just into how TrueRest induces
that.
Sensory deprivation.
Yes. Okay. So with us specifically, there's lots of float spas and just different float centers in the community, which is amazing. I love like seeing them pop up because I feel like that too is spreading awareness. People are really jumping on the bandwagon of float therapy, just noticing the benefits and things like that. With us specifically, we are really emphasizing that reduced environmental stimulus therapy, where you are laying in a pod that is skin temperature. You have the doors, you have the option, which again, modifications, but you shut the doors to the pod itself to where it blocks out any light. Our sensor lights in the rooms do turn off. So there's no light in the room. There's no, light seeping into the pod. You're in this enclosed structure by yourself, with no noise. If you choose to listen to total silence, you're not having anything, from outside the room, nothing, no music from within the spa, spa music going on. There's nothing interrupting you, and you're able to truly get into that state. I always try to explain it to people of like that feeling right before you're about to fall asleep. Ooh. Where it's just complete, relaxation. You're floating, there is that like time where sometimes people have that like jerk reaction, but not, that sensation without that reaction. But you're, floating in that pod where you, again, I feel like to your point of stressing about, am I going to be able to flow, or just whatever it is that you might be worried about. I feel like I try to focus, and as hard as this is, focus on nothing and really not give like the thought to, okay, well, what about this? What about that? What if I like don't float, whatever it is? Because with that, if you're not paying attention to the thing that you're necessarily worried about, sometimes you can, zone out in a way that's not affecting your float session. And so with TrueRest, we are passionate about the actual benefits of float therapy and actual rest therapy of that, to where you're floating in absolute silence in the skin temperature water where you don't have that stimulus, and you're able to 100%, rule out all of those other things that, your everyday life has, the notifications, the phone calls, just the needs of everything, whether also to mindlessly scrolling social media. I feel like if I have my phone in my hand, I'm like subconsciously just pulling it up, refreshing my feed, and I'm like, close it out, go back 3 seconds later. I'm like, you're not even doing it on purpose. Your mind is just doing that and not having the ability to do that. So putting your phone down, leaving it outside the pod, put it on do not disturb. Everything's okay for you to take 1 hour to yourself and truly get that therapy out of it, whether, whatever it is that you're coming in for, just again, telling yourself that you deserve this and you're able to do that, and letting, us take care of the rest, being able to totally relax. There's nothing you need to worry about. There's nothing you need to do. In fact, all you really need to do is bring yourself. I always like to personally bring a hairbrush to like brush my hair afterwards. But other than that, you just need to show up. That's all you need to do. And then follow our instructions, get in the pod. Like I said, hit the intercom if you need us. But being able to truly get that rest therapy out of the experience is what we aim to assist all guests with. So
awesome, dude. Awesome. Yeah. And honestly, and that's what I love so much, just because exactly your point, and this is so important, ladies and gentlemen, the mindless scrolling.
Yes.
I had a friend who is a yogi, and she told me, like, when I told her, I'm like, oh, when I'm trying to do like the meditation and the breathing and things like that, I can't do it. I'm just sitting here, and every time I try to clear my mind, everything like that, a thought pops in, and another thought pops in, things like that. And she told me that during meditation is being able to sit there and let thoughts come in and out. Yeah. That's what meditation is. Meditation is not clearing your mind. It is letting those things come in and out. Yeah. And that's why I like the brand of, sensory deprivation and using that word, because that allows people to practice that. without all of that, right? Like with the mindless scrolling and things like that. And it'll help improve that because now you're sitting there and your thoughts are going to come. You're human, you're live. So you are going to be thinking and your brain's going to be processing, but it's that in and out. And then you get better at it, at bringing things in and then letting it go, bringing things in and letting it go. And so if anything, people are getting that experience.
Absolutely.
That is amazing.
And to talk, I'm so happy you brought that up because I think one thing is having that sensation where you're, struggling with being able to have a thought come in and then, not dwell on it or not having the urge to reach for your phone. Sometimes people feel uncomfortable after their float session because they had that almost like anxiety or stress to like want to grab their phone or want to it's uncomfortable because we always have access to that, and to really practice and through time work up to being able to have the ability to step into the pod and be like, nope, I'm doing this. It's almost like you work up to it because I think it would be crazy to say that you get into the pod and you know why you're going in, what you're trying to achieve after your float session, but to tell someone you're not going to have the urge to reach for your phone or you're not going to have, the overthinking that happens, which just happens, it's not like we're choosing to do it, but that is through practice, any different practice, healing modalities. You're not going to necessarily, not to say that people couldn't have a great first experience because they really do. Like I said, mine went by pretty fast. My experience versus your experience might be 100% different, but that's not to say that if you don't have the best float your first time, like you should rule it out and not try it again, because I think that is one thing that everybody's going to experience, that uncomfortableness of, oh, man, what if someone's texting me? What if someone's calling me? What if my boss needs something? Like whatever it is, to where, my baby, I'm like, what if my babysitter needs something, or like someone needs me? You get in a pattern of thinking of all these things that could potentially go wrong. And so I think that practice is such an important thing. Just practice giving yourself that time to allow yourself the hour to float and take that time for you. Because like I said, most people aren't going to 100% just like fall into it and have the best, most, I'm not overthinking experience possible. So just being willing to take time and try it again and just like be aware of those things that you're getting out of it and being able to attribute them to the float therapy. So.
Oh, big time. You hit the nail on the head. I tell people all the time, that's exactly why, of course, with AVO and everything, and even my own personal training company, we're not going to do the things that you like to do. We're not, because what's going to happen. You're going to get stuck in that way of thinking, and then you're going to have so many physical problems, but you're not going to grow.
Totally.
If you just keep doing the things that you are comfortable with doing, especially in my case with people with personal training and physical fitness and things like that all the time. People love staying in their niches, and then they never improve. And they're like, I wonder why I'm getting better. But that goes also with recovery techniques.
Definitely.
Especially like those that are more meditative and things like that. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit hard. It can be. Right. You can have a great experience, but yeah, like you said, you can also not, right?
Right.
But the point is that you go back and you practice. As a matter of fact, if you are having a bad experience, you probably need to come back.
Totally.
Because you need to get uncomfortable. You need to let that shell crack a little bit.
Yes.
And so I'm really, really glad that you touched on that, because that is something that is, I will hopefully one day make it into law to push yourself. But for now,
Yes.
Exactly. So
totally.
with that being said, Joe, tell us how can we consume information about TrueRest, about you guys? Like, where do we go? How do we set up an appointment? All that good stuff.
So we have an online booking system. We have a website, TrueRest.com. You just go on there, pick the location. You can, search within Utah. We just have our Draper and our Provo location. We're right off the exit on the Draper Freeway, and then in the Riverwood Shopping Center in Provo. And so best way to book is either going to be online or calling us. We have our phone number listed on the website as well. We just go over float prep with you, tell you, some of the recommendations, such as like hair dye is a big thing. Because of the warm water, we don't want red hair dye or black hair dye to, seep out and potentially dye the pod itself. So that's one thing that we always will reschedule individuals. We have smaller things such as like avoiding caffeine for 4 hours prior, just so that you're not jittery. Avoid eating a really large meal, but definitely eat something small to where the small meal can help you, just not feel super hungry. But the large meal, you're going to be really aware of your body digesting it, the gurgles, things like that happen. So, those types of recommendations, we'll go over that with you. And then we do get a valid credit card on file to hold any and all appointments, but it won't be charged until at checkout. So that's one thing that people always have questions about as well. And then other than that, we are on social media. We're on Instagram at TrueRest Draper and TrueRest Provo, and always trying to, come up with content and things like that to share with our people, share our guest experiences, and just, fun ways to teach about float therapy, just so that we're able to bring knowledge and information to the public about it. So
wonderful. Yes. Excellent. And as a prominent member of the AVO community as well, we are also going to be posting we're going to be posting this podcast, any of information that they put out on their social media, anything to do with events that they have coming up with AVO partners and other things that they'll be doing kind of on their own if they ever, if they ever have those scheduled. You can find all of that information on our community platform Circle through www.avocommunity.org. And we cannot wait to come in there and try it out myself. Yes. Hey, I may have to have a little a life vest in my pod, just in case. Yes. But
whatever helps you feel most comfortable.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. Well, no, I'm excited to have you in, and we'll have to set something up, because it seriously, not only do I want everybody to try it, but I would love to hear everyone's experience, and maybe your first experience versus your second and third experience. Just kind of see that journey, how it, happens over time for you, and just the different things that you notice during every session. So we're excited. So
nothing I love more than progress.
Yes.
So most definitely. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jill, for coming on. We appreciate you. And we will most definitely have to get in that pod real soon. So
okay, well, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Of course.